This is Pro Football Ireland's Week 18 NFL podcast. A little bit different this week. Michael McQuaid here. Delighted to be here ahead of the final weekend of the NFL regular season. No Hogan, no Hez. Diggin appears in part 2 and part 3, but I'm opening it up with a man that can only be described as probably the most famous man from Hawaii currently sitting on a sofa in London. Jeffrey Reinbold. It's Thursday. Week 18 is upon us. But can I just start off by just congratulating you on the Hawaii Bowl win? And it's one thing saying that, but you know, to see the amount of time and effort that you put into doing stuff with us, what you do on Sky Sports, but to obviously you FaceTime you a lot and you're flat to the mat. I remember 12 months ago we were doing a live event in just outside Armagh, and you were staying in a hotel, and the season was over. But you guys were in meetings for 3 hours and FaceTime. The amount of work and hard effort that you have put into that, and I know you must not just be very, very happy, but also very emotional as well. So, fair play, well done. And it's just a pity the game was on Christmas Eve. I mean, come on, man, sort that out next year. But well done. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, and it was really special because it's been 6 years since Hawaii's been in a bowl game, and to win the Hawaii Bowl at home against an ACC opponent in the University of California. It was interesting, Mike. This season started with a win against the Power 4 opponent in Stanford, and it ended with a win against the Power 4 opponent in Cal. And it's been a lot of years since the University of Hawaii has, done that. And that's a really cool thing to be a part of. And I didn't think we played all that well, but man, I tell you what, our kids found a way, and that's what matters.
I feel like we could talk about that for so long. Just to remind people right now, I guess it's over at this point, but if you're listening early on New Year's Day, there was a college football podcast with Dara and Connell and myself looking ahead to the 3 games, including the iconic Rose Bowl on New Year's Day. Before we start off here, Jeff, and talk about a number of things to make people aware, of course, we're presented by SBK. Sportsbook only, no roulette, no casino, no bull, as we say. Check out all the enhanced offers on our socials this week and in the bio. Click the link. It's probably not the most easiest week to pick because it's such, there's so many things on edge here, but you'll definitely find some value there. And there will be a podcast on Friday morning with myself and Jeff going through our week 18 selections. Again, folks, 18 plus, please gamble responsibly. And Jeff, and for everybody listening, what a big weekend. The schedule's out, obviously, for week 18 this weekend. Saturday, NFC South decider kicks it off, win and in, Panthers, Bucks. Later on the Saturday night, we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, Jeff. Seahawks, Niners in Levi's. Not just winning in. Both teams are in already. Win, you win the NFC West, and my God almighty, you get the number 1 seed in the NFC. We'll come back to that in a second. Plethora of games, obviously, the full schedule on Sunday. I guess the biggest ones to just mention there very quickly. Chargers, Broncos is in that later window, alongside the Patriots game. And also as well, I believe, Jacksonville are actually earlier on. There's a bit of a predicament there we'll talk about in a bit. And it all ends in game 272. The Ravens against the Steelers. You'll obviously hear from Connell and myself going into that a bit, but the Steelers really messing up. The Ravens are back, baby, as well. What a year. What a time. And Jeff, I feel like I said a lot. It's great to have you back in Sky Sports, but this is the time of the year. If you're a fan of the sport, if you're a fan of this is where it gets going. We are 4.5 weeks out from sharing a poorly poured Guinness in California together. But right here, right now, this is it. This is what we wait for all year. Like, this is one of the biggest weekends of the season. And the NFL, frankly, Jeff, was very lucky because this schedule could have been absolute dog crap. But it's fine. It's great.
It's Mike, I've never seen in all the years I've followed the NFL, and that's a lot, that there's more evenly matched field than there is right now. And here we are going into week 18, and we don't even know the seedings yet. So there's so much still to play for. And then once we get to the playoffs, you talk about the Niners and the Seahawks game. Think about both those teams. If the Niners win and get the number 1 seed, conceptually, they would stay in their same locker room through the entire playoffs, right? Now, if you're the Seahawks, on the other hand, you know how important it is to play at home and to play in front of the 12 and, all of the things that come with, that stadium and the noise and the, the energy, and so that game is a monstrous game. And then you got to you talk about game two. You call it game 272. I call it Armageddon, because those are two teams that hate each other and have a long established hatred for one another, and it goes down to the last weekend, and you have to beat them to knock them out. I mean, it's just like, wow.
Um, just one thing on that. Obviously, a few days back there on Sunday, we seen the Steelers lose the Niners in a classic, which we recapped, or you recapped so eloquently on our live show on Monday night, Jeff, as well there. But just on that, it shows me how much pull 41, 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers still has, that this is the final game of the season. I genuinely thought that the Seahawks-Niners game on Saturday night was locked in for this final game. What two different elements? One, are you on Sky Sports this weekend breaking this all down? And will you be live on Saturday night is the question. That's a big game. We need a studio for that. And two, um, who needs this win more? You sort of talked about it a bit there. Like I feel like the Niners need it more, because I feel like the Seahawks have more in terms of their total team. This is a great game on Saturday night.
You know what? It's interesting. We talk about the Seahawks, and we watched the Seahawks play Carolina last week, and now it's on the road after a big win, a huge comeback against the Rams. Again, there's a lot of things you could factor into that, but I didn't think the Seahawks played that well, particularly on offense. Now, their defense was outstanding, but when you get to playoff football, and the games are so close, and everybody's so evenly matched, you have to be able to score points. And my concern right now, if I'm a Seahawk fan, is, can my quarterback get me to the promised land? Because in every situation in the playoffs, you have to make plays, you have to make throws, you have to be able to deliver at critical moments. And I am not sold yet on Sam Darnold's ability to do that. I think I would have more faith in Brock Purdy, frankly, than I would in Sam Darnold.
Just on that, because it's a very valid point. Anyone who's a football fan, or maybe people are coming into this new, Sam Darnold, last year, Jeff, who did he play for? What was their record? And what happened in wildcard weekend? It's a valid point, and it's going to be up to him to really prove that, especially if, hypothetically, if the Niners win on Saturday night and the Seahawks have to go on the road, they could end up meeting each other again,
Yeah, I think the Seahawks particularly need to win this football game. Now, you said San Francisco needs to win it, and certainly, having the opportunity to be at home throughout the playoffs is a huge advantage. I don't know how many times that's happened. I think 3 times in the history of the Super Bowl. But if you think about all that it means to Seattle to host, and for teams to go into that environment, Mike, I'm just telling you, and this is a fact. The University of Washington is about 15 miles from the Seahawks Stadium, and they have a seismograph in the geology department at the University of Washington, and it's there, and it measures, when they have a eruption, an earthquake, or anything along the Pacific coast. And when the Seahawk fans are at their, at the peak during a game, they actually register on the seismograph at the University of Washington. So that's the kind of noise that opponents have to deal with when they go into that stadium.
So many factors on this game. Let's try and break down one each. I think the obvious one that impressed me so much on Sunday night, past last week, as we look ahead this weekend, Christian McCaffrey is like a robot, man. Just I know Brock Purdy was so impressive. He done a number of great things without George Kittle there. TBC seems unlikely he's going to play this weekend. They might try and keep him if they get that bye and then bring him back. Time will tell. Of course, the little things we're not too sure of on this podcast this week. That's one of them. McCaffrey, man, I don't know how he gets up and just keeps going and going and going and going and going. That's
Mike,
one element.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. Like, I thought early in the game, particularly, he was by far the best player on the field. And, there were a couple runs he made in that game that just, I'm not going to say they defy description, but they were certainly incredible runs. I mean, you're talking about a guy that has all the components that you need in a running back. He's strong, he's physical, he's tough, he's got great first step. He can make a jump cut in the hole, he can accelerate, he's got great contact balance, all of it. And then on top of it, you can put him out of the backfield and he's a tremendous receiver. So there are very few backs in the NFL. You talk about the other guys, Derrick Henry, big, strong, physical back, great back, scored 4 touchdowns last week. He can't do some of the things that McCaffrey can do. You talk about Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is not nearly the threat out of the backfield that McCaffrey is. So McCaffrey probably is the best overall running back in the National Football League right now. And this is the time of year when the games get close and you have to be able to close games out and you have to be able to score and you have to be able to run the football, where a guy like that can help you in 3 dimensions of your offense.
It's funny you say that because it went viral last weekend on Sunday. NBC's coverage is like the PFF rankings, and like McCaffrey was ranked 18th, and I was like, get out of here with that. Ridiculous. Seahawks fans listening, lots of them. Shout out to Ron, our photographer, who was watching you guys on Sky Sports last weekend, and good to have you back as well, Jeff. Key to the game for Seattle. Seattle fans are, very, very conscious that they are 60 minutes away here from going into a major rival, and we're not talking about the Rams here because it's win and you're done in this game. That's the reality of it now. But what's the key for Seattle here, do you think, Jeff?
I think here's 2 things that struck me about Seattle when I watched yesterday, and I think these are going to be the things that they've got to do through the playoffs. Number one, they got to continue to play that kind of defense. Their defense was lights out against Carolina, and I know that's Carolina. That's not the Rams. That's not the 49ers. That's not some of the people they're going to play in the playoffs. But certainly, I think, for them to travel, this is the thing. Mike, they played 88 snaps of defense the week before against the Rams in that huge comeback win. 88 snaps is in the NFL is like a game and a half. So then they had to go on a short week all the way across the country, 5 time zones away, to play in the South. And for that defense to travel that well and be as dominant as they were tells me that that's a defense you can hang your hat on. Now, can the offense not screw it up? And I think when I say that, I'm talking about Darnold in particular. Can he not throw interceptions? Can he be just good enough? Because this is what I see from Clint Kubiak, the coordinator, that they're willing to stick with the run. They did not move the ball very well at all for most of the game, but they stayed with what they knew they had to do, which is run the ball with Charbonnet. And in the end, they ended up they wore Carolina out. And so they were able to finish the game. I think that's going to be a key for them during the playoffs. They have to, to me, that's the recipe. If you're the Seattle Seahawks, run the football, don't turn it over, let your defense get you a possession, get you a turnover, get you a big sack, whatever, to turn the tide in the game.
Time will tell if that happens, and time will tell what Jeff's pick is. We'll get that on Friday's PFI Picks podcast selected, or JFS, JRS podcast presented by SBK. Your guy here needs some coffee, and I'll tell you who else needs coffee. A couple of quick fire things to finish up the segment, Jeff. We put out a beautiful graphic earlier this week of a very good looking man, Pete Carroll, in his Raiders jacket. Raiders 2-14 going into week 18. Reported earlier on the week, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, that Max Crosby back in the building. Not expected to play, obviously shut down. Vegas will play the Chiefs. I mean, I think we're both in agreement here. It looks like it's going to be the Raiders picking Mendoza potentially in Pittsburgh.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that situation. Obviously, the Giants and the Raiders game this past weekend was kind of like for the first round pick, and the Giants dominated the Raiders in the game, and Again, this is a side note, but I really think that the Giants' job, which is going to come open, is going to be one of the most coveted jobs out there in the NFL. And I'm just going to throw a little salt out there and see what comes
Oh.
back. But one of the guys that has a deep, deep appreciation for the New York Giants history, for the New York Giants uh, culture, for the city of New York, is a guy that's a college coach in the state of North Carolina right now, and he
Mm.
has he has Super Bowl rings in his closet from his time as a defensive coordinator for the New York Giants, and that's Bill Belichick. And I think that would be, if I'm the Maras, that would be one call that I would make very, very quickly and just gauge his interest on whether he wants to get out of college football and come back to the NFL at a place that he really loves and has always loved and has a deep affection for. So I think that's going to be a really interesting situation. See where that goes.
We will break down the AFC West and we'll also break down the AFC North in part two and part three. Just finally for you, Jeff, in this segment, don't give too many picks away, but who's going to be the number one seed in the AFC come late Sunday night?
I have said this, and I'll go on record as having said it all the way back when we got together and first talked about this
The Bucks, you
season.
said the Bucks were going to the Super Bowl and
Back,
they're one
no,
game out from the
I
playoffs.
said the Broncos and the Bucks. I thought were the two teams that I really thought could get it done. Now, let's talk about the Bucks. The Bucks have, that big pirate ship in Raymond James Stadium, right? I call it Raymond James because that's what I grew up
That's
knowing
what
it
it's still
as.
called. It's still called that.
Okay, well, that big pirate ship over in the one end zone of Raymond James Stadium, it is taking water badly. It has been torpedoed and it is sinking. Uh, Mike, they have been absolutely awful. Like all those things that they did early in the season where Baker Mayfield's making plays and it didn't matter who was hurt, who was healthy, there he was going to find a way. It's all gone south, and they have one more shot. And it's amazing that they have a shot at this point, but they have one more shot, and that's to beat Carolina next week. And if they don't do that, I'm afraid for Todd Bowles' future with
I agree.
Tampa. I really, really am.
When do you fly back this weekend? Do you fly back on Monday or Tuesday, Jeff?
I fly back on the 6th. I'll be in Hawaii on the 7th.
So what we're saying is, you're talking about Todd Bowles there. What you're saying is we can break it down on Monday the 5th before you fly back
Yep.
live. I have a feeling that something like that is going to be, obviously there'll be the fallout from game 272,
Oh,
what's
that's
going to happen either side.
Michael. That's what we call in coaching Black Monday, because that's when there's so many things that are going to come down. What is Pete Carroll going to do? Is he going to stay around another year? Is this going to be a one and done for Pete Carroll? We know that there's going to be change with the Giants, and there'll be change, I think, around the league. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see as many as 4 or 5 jobs open throughout the NFL. And, there'll be some that will surprise us, but, it's just the way it is in the business.
That's football, baby. We will be live on Monday night to recap Week 18, look ahead to the playoffs, and really talk about this Black Monday. And knowing Jeff and his time zone and his flights, we're probably going to have to record everything else for the week with you, Jeff, before you fly back to Hawaii. I just on record, I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to meet up here over these last 2 weeks, but certainly very much looking forward to having you out in San Fran. I know it's all sorted, it's all going to happen, so excited for that. 2 points of note before we end this segment. I know I said that 5 minutes ago, but just to state, because I know we've fans listening from different teams and fans listening that maybe have nothing to play for this week, but I will just say one thing. This team certainly has something to play for down the stretch. Potentially the final game ever at the Bills Stadium this week, unless they make a run to get a home place in the playoffs. Unlikely. And I was listening to Pat McAfee earlier in the week, Jeff, and they brought out a stat. The New York Jets have the worst record, 23 points or more in however many games since some like 1925 team, the Indians or something, that are no longer like here for obvious reasons. That is outrageous, and I have nothing more to say on that bar. Just Jesus, that is absolutely outrageous, and time will tell. We'll probably get into that more on Black Monday, and maybe talk about Aaron Glenn then. Yeah, I think we should.
Well, I think it's the Jets didn't get screwed up in a week, and they're not going to get fixed in a week. It is going to be a long-term process there, and they've got to really look at a number of things inside that building, and it starts from the top, and that's Woody Johnson and ownership. And, I know some guys that have worked in that building and speak very highly of him. They say he doesn't know much football, but he's really a good owner, and he wants to succeed, and he wants to do the right thing and help and all that stuff. The problem is, at times he puts too much faith in the wrong people, and that's a tough situation. You want an owner that will, give you the wherewithal, they'll give you the money, that'll do the things that it takes to win, but not want to meddle in the football part. Leave it to football guys. And when you hire people, you better hire good football guys. Frankly, the Jets, it's been too long since the Jets had good football guys in that building. And, that's what you get when you don't have good football guys making football decisions.
So Connell up with me over the next couple of parts, looking at the AFC West, the AFC North, the NFC South in detail as well. A hell of a Week 18 schedule. Jeff, good luck to you and everybody in Sky Sports NFL. Can't wait to hear off record of conversation why it was so cold on Saturday night. Even my wife wants me to find out why that studio was so cold. But I thought of you because I know you love when you're so cold and you can't feel anything in your arms. So,
Mike, Leslie and I were downtown in London today. I mean to tell you, I'm not a cold weather guy. I am not. And you know what? I think we were talking about it today. We may go take a cold water swim on New Year's Day to ring in the new year. And that might be the last thing I do. It might be my swan song, jumping into frozen water, but hey, bring it on.
Yeah, we're pre-recording this on New Year's Eve, so Jeff, just in case Jeff does, not come back from that. Please God, everyone's all right, Jeff. There, hope you and your wife have a great time in London over the next few days. And look, Jeff, thank you for everything you're doing for us. We certainly appreciate it. And folks, if you have a chance, check out Jeff, Neil, Phoebe, Jason, everybody this weekend. Good to have Jeff back in the screens again. Jeff, this is the end of this segment. I remind people we have 2 more segments left. We're presented by SBK. All the information 18 plus. Please be gamble aware in the comments. But give us a aloha, Jeff, to see you out of this segment, and we'll catch you on the picks tomorrow.
This has been Jeff Reinebold for Pro Football Ireland's network of podcasts. Aloha.
You are very welcome into the second part of our NFL Week 18. They said 15 there, preview on Pro Football Ireland, Ireland's NFL, Ireland's American football platform, presented by SBK. A number of different offers this weekend with SBK in relation to the final weekend of the NFL regular season. A big thanks to Jeff for joining us for the first part, breaking down what's going on in the NFC West and across different bases as well as we get to the permutations point of the regular season final weekend. Delighted in the second and third part of this podcast to talk about a number of different aspects of such a huge weekend in the NFL, with probably the biggest Broncos fan in Kerry, Connell Diggin. Connell, thank you for making the switch from college football to NFL for this week. I really appreciate it, and I know over the last few days a lot has been asked of you, so it's very much appreciated. How are you doing? What's crack?
Good, everything's good. On the college side, obviously preparing for the playoff games, which I think will be very big this week, and then have been very big this week, and then obviously and then, obviously last week we had a great slate of NFL games, and we have some big ones coming up this week that have not only massive playoff implications, actually are basically play-in games for some of these teams.
We are going to talk about that sort of down through the stretch. You mentioned the college football games. I know you're getting your times mixed up because this is going out on New Year's Day. We have a triple header of New Year's games in the college football playoff on New Year's Day alone, including the Rose Bowl. So if you're listening to this first thing in the morning, do check that out and check out Dara Connell and I guess myself as well, breaking it down on this podcast network. And thank you, boys, for that there, Connell. Connell, before we start, Happy New Year, 2026, baby. What's are you excited for the new year? Do you care about the new year? Is this something that you really met?
I think I suppose me and Dara are both going to be graduating from college. We've spent our entire for basically 3.5 years of our college life doing this with you. So I don't know if that's a good a good thing we've done with our time or a bad thing we've done with our time. But yeah, I suppose that's probably the 2026 is the year I actually probably have to enter the big bad world for the first time. But other than that, I should be grand, I'd say.
That was a very northern word there as well, grand. If you can keep it up in the way I do, I obviously work and do this in my own time, so hopefully you boys can stick in. You're obviously both very, very much appreciated. And I think I hate the whole new year, new me stuff, but I guess the one thing for NFL fans, I know we've got the college football game coming to Ireland this year. I'd love to see the NFL return in 2026. We will see what happens. Ironically, I'm actually standing. Wow. I'm literally opposite Crook Park right now as I speak. So hopefully I talk it into existence and it happens. And Connell holds up a mini helmet of the Dublin game.
It was one of the only things I was able to get from the NFL shop. I do have an NFL ball though, because I think you could order them online from Elvery's. So I ordered one direct to my house, but I've still never blown it up yet. It's just deflated the entire time.
Yet being the biggest thing, that could be your New Year's resolution. We might talk about New Year's resolutions in a minute. We are going to focus on this podcast segment in terms of the win and in game in the NFC South. But before we do that, just a very, very quick one from me, Connell, in terms of Charlie Smith. He started his 5th game in succession last weekend when the Saints beat the Titans 34-26. He finishes his season against the Falcons this weekend. I want to bring it up because, he was ill last week. He hit a 54-56 yarder in the second half up against Wind as well. I started getting not negative comments, but just there seems to be guys out there that just want this guy to fail and different guys to fail. I just don't get that personally. Really, really proud of the guy. I know me and you have not spoken about Charlie on a podcast like this here. What's it like seeing a young lad do this? He's not far off your age in that sense.
Yeah, I actually have his birth date up ahead of me, so he's like a year and a half older than me, basically. And thinking that he graduated college and instead of basically going in to do a job, he went in and was like, I'll just try and play in the NFL. It's definitely something I probably don't have the chance to do. But you never know, actually. To be fair, us Kerry lads, if we wanted, we could kind of do whatever we wanted. All our GAA skills are transferable. But I think, even today, I think what I've really been impressed with is, they've gone 4-1. The Saints have gone 4-1 in games that Charlie has started. They've won 4 in a row, and even that Miami first game, they only lost that, and he gave them a chance to win it. It's not often you can say a kicker gave you a chance to win a game, but he hit a massive field goal in that game, and he obviously had an onside kick, which is I think one of the only ones, or one of 3 or 2 that has been made this season. He did that in his first game, and then even in the games where he's missed kicks, they've been from it's not, they've not been chip shots, which is basically what you're asking your kicker to do is, make the easy ones. And if you can get us a couple ones from 50 yards plus and 40 yards plus, that's kind of all you can really ask for them. He missed one on Sunday from, I think it was 47. That's acceptable. So long as, you're not missing multiple in a game, which he hasn't done yet as well. He's not missed an extra point yet either. He knows what he's doing and he's done it really well.
And I think it's really important to sort of say what you said there. He's not missing multiples in games. He obviously wants to hit every one of them over. He's still learning. And I think the biggest thing for the Saints, and something that you can see through Callum Moore, is they're giving these players the opportunity to actually develop, which is paying off dividends. They're on a winning streak. In terms of Charlie, I had the chance earlier on this week to head down to the Sport Ireland campus and see all these different guys that are in college football as well, and obviously guys trying to get to that next step as well. So it's just really, really cool to see it. And I would just again remind people that in my opinion, I'm granted people are allowed to have their own opinions. Absolutely, that's what a democracy is. But I think it's really important to have these relationships and have this talent come through. And before we talk about this NFC side, just one more point on Irish talent. Dan Whelan having a great season. He played in his 50th game for the Green Bay Packers last weekend. That Ravens loss, the Packers had, but Dan now is going to make a big playoff push, and he will be vital, especially with the injury issues that the Packers currently have. Dan could be vital if they give him the ball. They didn't give him the ball last weekend, which is very strange. They kept going for it, but obviously from us, we wish Charlie and Dan the best of luck. Obviously, Charlie's final weekend this weekend, and Dan, hopefully, man, you can go as long as you can. Hopefully we get the first Irish Super Bowl winner this year. We will see what happens.
They're confirmed in the playoffs, and I don't think they can get above the 7th seed or whatever. So I wouldn't even be surprised if they rested a lot of their starters, considering the injuries that they've had this year. But I think a lot of the problems that Packers fans have had this year has actually been with the special teams, but not with the specialists themselves in McManus or Dan Whelan. It's been in the coverage. So when you consider that Dan Whelan, he has obviously the third highest average punt by literally 0.4 of a yard, which is incredible anyway. But that he's still top 10 in net average, which has a lot to do with how good the players and the coverage team are actually playing, and the fact that he probably is getting enough hang time to kind of make up for some of the shortcomings that the special teams units are showing. I think it is very impressive from Dan Whelan this year.
Let's see what happens for Dan over the next few weeks. Best luck to him. We're having the crack, Conal, when we rock in 10 minutes into this. We don't even talk about Week 18, but we will right now. Probably the biggest talking point in this entire segment is the fact that Week 18, it looked like it might not for a little bit, Conal, but it is going to have a number of different things. We're going to talk about the AFC North in the next segment in this podcast, but in this segment of the podcast, we are going to focus on the NFC South, which is going down to Week 18 of the season. And I tell you what, Conal, I think we talked about it off camera a wee bit there, but I said it there a second ago. There was literally an opportunity for us to be on a podcast here where everything was lined up, everything was gone. The reality is now, it was mad because in Week 17, both the Bucks and the Panthers both lost the games. We might talk about that in a second when we look through each team here. But Panthers sitting 8-8 at the top of the division going into this game. Game is in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay Bucks sitting 7-9. It is a winner takes all contest. And the funny thing is, Conal, for me, obviously in these different group chats, I know you're in one as well that we're both in, and I've seen different people say that are these playoff caliber teams? It doesn't really matter. This is how it works. This is how the cookie crumbles. If you win, you're in. If you win your division, you're in. What I would say is, in a year of so much deja vu, it does seem like there's a lot of deja vu here when it comes down to the Bucks again going to the final week at home or on the road in the division, having to win and get in. But I guess if they win, they're not going to complain too much. 8-8 will get, 8-8 at the moment is 4th place in the NFC playoff picture. It will be 4th place. It will be a wild card weekend game. But the question is, Conal, who do you think is going to win this game at the weekend and why?
Well, who do I think is going to win and who do I want to win? I mean, who do I want?
Go for one first.
I want more than anything in the world the Panthers to win this game, for the simple reason that there's nothing I think is the least aesthetically pleasing thing going into a playoff game, looking back on seasons, is seeing a team with a losing record make the playoffs. 9-8, you can get into the playoffs. That's perfect. 8-8, when it used to, be an even numbered season, getting into the playoffs, that's perfect. But a team who finishes, especially now where it's 7-9, about 7-9, that's disgusting to look at. That is gross to look at. Or sorry, 8-9.
Spoken like a true college football fan, though. You need the 6 wins to be bowl eligible, of course. No, here you're bang on, and frankly, yes, the Bucks have had a lot of injury issues this year, but it's still not good enough that they're
I mean,
sitting 7-9 going to the week 18 with this situation.
like usually teams get better coming out of their bye week, and the Bucks have won one game coming out of their bye week. Like they're what is it, 1-7 at this stage, like 1-7, and the only team they beat was, no offense to to Jason and Mark, was the Arizona Cardinals. Like, and like they lost to New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina, and Miami. Like they should have won 3 of those games. Like you would at least put them on paper at winning 3 of those games. Like, and they've just not done it, and they've been really bad offensively and defensively in those games.
And like, I'll talk about the NFC West with Jeff in a different segment in this podcast for week 18, Connell. But hypothetically, from a mindset point of view, if you're Tampa Bay in week 17, you're going in to face the Miami Dolphins, knowing damn rightly that your divisional rivals have to go and play the Seattle Seahawks, albeit
For
at
the
home.
number 1 seed. Like,
yes,
you're going and playing a team who, even when Miami had their bit of resurgence in the past few weeks, haven't been good. Like lost, I think, their last 2 games or whatever. Like they've not been good the past few weeks. They have, again, no offense to Quinn Ewers, but they have Quinn Ewers at quarterback, and allowed him to not play amazingly, but they couldn't really do anything to stop him, and lost 20-17, and that 20-17 is a much better looking score, because that touchdown came in garbage time with like a minute left, and because Chris Godwin got wide open and ran for 50 yards or something like that near the end of the game. So, like, yeah, this Tampa team, obviously, you had the meltdown, maybe is the best way to put it, from Todd Bowles a few weeks ago as well, after they lost to Atlanta. So, I mean, things, we'll probably talk about it a bit later, people playing for their jobs or, coaching for their jobs this week, but he's definitely, I think, the number 1 candidate for that. And I think even if they do win, it's probably a candidate still to be fired.
It's been done before.
Oh yeah,
wildcard teams. And it's just in terms of wildcard teams. The last time the Bucks,
the Titans, the Titans did it, and then hired Mike Vrabel, and obviously made the playoffs for the next 3 or 4 years after that. So, like, it can lead to better things. Like, it's not even a fully negative thing at the same time.
And look at them now as well in terms of what's been done before as well. Though, when you look at, finishing maybe not with the best record per se in the conference, but Tampa Bay in 2020 went to the wild cards, won the Super Bowl. The Green Bay Packers in 2010 done the exact same thing as well. New York Giants have done it as well back in the day. It can be done. And frankly, and teams will argue about this. It doesn't really matter at this point if you have 12, 13, 14 wins rolling into week 18 or rolling into wildcard weekend, or if you're rolling off a bye week as well the week after, the season restarts, and that's the reality of it. So I think for me, the most disappointing thing about the Bucks this season has been really their inconsistency. And look, it's not easy when you've got multiple injuries on both sides of the ball. And obviously the biggest ones that stand out there is the fact that we've not really had the chance to see Mike Evans, Ibuka, different guys on the field at the same time. They've had issues with Bucky as well. He hasn't been fit. He hasn't been playing for a number of different reasons. And I think from a point of view that is disappointing. But am I mad to suggest that I think the Bucks win this game? I think the Bucks just find a way to turn it on. And I would say, as a Panther, if you were a Panthers fan, you would be devastated to be where you are right now going into week 18 on top of the division. Like, it's so much more, Connell, than this season. The ownership issues, the fact that 18 months ago fans were not taking a seat in the stadium. Like, there's so much more layers to this.
You could get tickets in the upper tiers for like $8 or something.
It's just unreal. But also, I think as well, Bryce Young, for him, from a confidence point of view, I've really enjoyed watching Rico Dowdle this year as well. This game has so many layers to it, in the fact of, we're seeing different teams finish for different positions in the NFL draft standings this weekend, especially in the lower echelons of the league. But the reality is, if a team goes in here at the weekend, and for example, if the Bucks creep through, that might save people's jobs for a couple of years, and like another year as well. But for the Panthers, it could really set them back, mentally as well. So it's a very, very important game. Can you make a case for the Panthers, or are you very much on the Bucks, or what's your thoughts?
I think if the Panthers did lose this one, they'd be ruining Charlie Smith for, the next time until they have to play him next, because you could argue that he would be the reason that they, missed the playoffs, considering he hit obviously the game-winning field goal on them a few weeks ago. I mean, because if, he misses that, or, they put the game beyond doubt earlier on, and don't give New Orleans a chance to win that game, they're in the playoffs by now. Like, that game is put to bed, and they're not in this battle with Tampa Bay. But that's the situation they've put themselves in, and Charlie Smith has put them in, more importantly for us. And yeah, the offense is weird. Like, some games Bryce Young, again, like against Atlanta a few weeks ago, would go for 400 yards. Sometimes they don't even play that well, but they come up in the big moments. And again, that win against Tampa was probably the biggest showing of that, where they just came up in the big moments. And Baker Mayfield didn't. I mean, throwing one of the strangest and worst interceptions you'll kind of see for a while, to end that game. So coming into this one, obviously, like in Tampa Bay, it's going to be difficult. But like, I think even if I was a Tampa Bay fan, the Panthers, even after losing this week, they lost to Seattle, who are the number 1 seed. I think their confidence is still very high, especially that they beat them only a few weeks ago as well. So I'm gonna choose. I think that the Panthers win this one, but it's gonna be the same as last time. It's gonna be extremely close.
One and done, my friends. One and done. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, folks. History will tell that more times more than less, this sort of team will go out the week after next, which means we've literally talked for no reason for the last 10 minutes, but it is what it is. Final part of this segment, Connell, just before we reach into the AFC North here. It is a new year, 2026, from today. If you had to give a New Year's resolution for one team in the league, what would it be and why? My New Year's resolution is to give Justin Herbert more protection and more weapons, because I feel like every week the guy is walking off the field and he's just demented. Nothing's going right for him. If people can bottle the frustration that the Buffalo Bills have had over the last 40 years in terms of not getting the ring, it feels like they've put that bottle and allowed Justin Herbert to drink it, because the way the Chargers have played at times this season has been phenomenal. And then you see what they've done in week 17, you're asking yourself, what's next? That's just my resolution. I know you're a huge Broncos fan, so feel free to talk about that or whatever you want.
My resolution was kind of for the more league in general, and I think this year there's a good chance we see like 5 to 6 new head coaches hired, and a lot of the talk this year has been that there's not a whole lot of offensive and coordinator or offensive minded head coaching candidates. So I think this year, and especially with how we've seen a lot of the best NFL teams play this year with the Seahawks, the Bears, like even some of the bad teams, the reason they've been so good is because of their defense, like the Panthers, Broncos, Jags, like they're carried by their defense, even the Texans again. So I think this year, more than anything, and with how many top quality quarterbacks miss the playoffs because of their defenses not being great, I think this year we're going to see a bit of a reverse trend of defensive coordinators and defensive minded head coaches getting hired. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Vance Joseph leaves the Broncos, which I think I would be sad about, because he's obviously basically the driving force behind how good they've been. But we're going to see a lot of really good players or really good coaches leave. I mean, even when you're looking at the Seahawks, like Mike McDonald is the reason that they've been so good, because he's the Sean McVay of defensive minds kind of in the NFL. And it's teams looking at, instead of how can we, match the offenses like that Andy Reid has or Kyle Shanahan has or Sean McVay have, how can we try and stop them instead and try and even the playing field a little bit? So I think we're probably going to see a lot more defensive hires rather than offensive hires in the NFL this year.
Let me ask you this, right? Who needs a number 1 seed in the AFC more? Going into this weekend, we know that we've got Denver and New England up there. I believe Jacksonville's a game back. Jacksonville will play Tennessee at home. The Broncos have got the Chargers, who will probably rest because they have nothing to play for. And then New England are hosting Miami. It looks increasingly likely that it's going to be the Broncos as number 1 seed. The reason I'm asking people this, folks, is because Connell is a big Broncos fan. like myself. If anybody does a bit of digging on the internet, no harm to the crack. The thing, this is why I'm sort of fascinated. I was driving down here earlier on, and I was thinking of things we could talk about around week 18, but more in general, Connell. And watching this Broncos team, they have done so much this year. They've won so many games. They've got over the line so many times. And you're smiling because I think you know what I'm going to say here. But I watched that game in week 17 on Christmas night. And at one point, with about 5 minutes to go, I thought, they're not going to lose to a first-string quarterback with the Chiefs, are they? And I felt like that, like, I don't know, Jesus, the game against the Jets in London, 2 or 3 games before that Chiefs game. That being said, they're getting it done. They're getting over the line. And nobody really gives a damn about the week 15, 16, 17 score for any Super Bowl champion come the middle of February in 2026. But I really feel like they just need to take it up a gear a little bit more. But I feel like the Broncos need that bye week. I think they need a bye week to keep working, to keep preparing. Because I look at Drake May and see what he done against, yes, albeit the New York Jets, who frankly, James Madison probably would have beat. I still feel like that, Patriots offense is better. So you tell me, who needs that number 1 seed more?
Well, I mean, the Jags technically still have a chance as well, because if both teams somehow manage to lose in the final week and the Jags win, the Jags are playing, I think, the Titans. The Jags, because they beat the Broncos, have the tiebreaker over the Broncos, which then has them.
That's outrageous, by the way.
So the Jags.
Hold on. If we actually go back, but if we actually go back to week 1, if the Patriots had just beaten the Raiders, this wouldn't even be a conference. Like, this is insane. So this is why it's like, right. And I am going to get maybe a bit of flack. I would love to see the Broncos make a run over the next few weeks. I watched the Elway documentary on Netflix.
It would be great if the first Super Bowl I go to would have the Broncos in it, just for personal experience.
Well, touch wood. we haven't heard yet, but you're right. The last time the Broncos were AFC West champions. They obviously won the AFC, won the Super Bowl in the same stadium. All I can think of is CJ Anderson, man, running. But there are echelons of that team that still stand out to me, but at the same time, it's a very different team. I'm not saying I'm not convinced, Connell, but we both know the minute that this flips, the minute that this switch flicks here after this weekend, it's a brand new season. So how does Bo Nix get to that next level? How does Bo Nix get to that next level? What do they need to do you think?
Stop. I mean, but his numbers are so strange because, his early quarter numbers are usually not great because, I think a lot of the time Sean Payton just wants to try and control the game early and, get things taken over, and it just kind of fails at times. And sometimes that's Bo Nix's fault and sometimes that's just the play calling. But, we've seen it so many times this year in games that they're chasing or in games where they need to win late, especially that Giants game, when they just kind of let Bo Nix play like he needs to and, find Cortland Sutton downfield and, throw deep balls without, having to set it up beforehand. Like, he's been a great quarterback and he's been one of the most clutch quarterbacks this year, which I think is why it's kind of been so frustrating, because there are times where you're like, oh yeah, this is exactly what the Broncos should do every single week, and you kind of come out of a game, and like even the Packers game where that was probably the best game of his career, definitely his best game this season, where you're looking at it and you're like, okay, they're going to come out and probably do more of the same next week, and then they just they revert to form and just don't run the ball super effectively, or they pass the ball in weird stages. So I think, do I think Bo Nix is ever going to be like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL? Probably not. But do I think he'll be a good quarterback and is a good quarterback? I think, yeah, he is. And it does, again, with how they've played against good teams this year as well, like, it shows that when we get to the playoffs, unlike last year where, you were pretty certain that they were going to lose to the Bills like they did, you feel a little bit more confident going into it this year that whoever they play, and it's going to be a good team, whether it's the Texans or the Chargers or the Bills in that wildcard game. Like, you're getting to play a good team, and you'd feel confident because, at least if they beat the Chargers next week, they'll have beaten all those teams, in recent times.
Time will tell what's going to happen this week, going into week 18 and going forward in the playoffs as well. Looking forward to wildcard weekend getting underway after this weekend. And Connell, just a reminder for people listening, first off, this man watched Bo Nix across college football in Oregon. And secondly, obviously we're presented by
Can I
SBK.
can I
Oh,
say
go for
that
it.
actually when he got drafted by the Broncos, I remember hearing somebody who's also on this podcast being not very excited about it, and he's the other guy currently talking, and now he's currently talking about them possibly making the Super Bowl. So
First man to hold my hand up. I explicitly said as well I thought the Colts would be an absolute disaster this season. And look what happened for the first 66%. No, look, I hold my hands up big time. Big time. I do have question marks in regards to some of his plays in terms of Bo Nix, but his energy is great. If he can keep it up, I do think he can get into the top 5. Why not? So we will see. Thank you for calling me out there. I was saying we're presented by SBK, so do check out the odds, folks, both in this bio and across our social media heading into week 18. And one thing I should have said at the start of this segment is 18 plus, please be gamble aware. We'll be back in a second for part 3. We're going to look at the AFC North. We're going to make a bold prediction each, and we're really going to hear about who is playing for the job this weekend as well in week 18. Back in a second. It's week 18 of the NFL season. This is the final segment of our preview show presented by SBK. Obviously, folks, SBK Sportsbook only, no roulette, no casino, no crap, just pure sports betting, 18 plus. Please be gamble aware. In all seriousness, so some great odds. We have some enhanced odds this weekend in the final weekend of the regular season, so check them out online. And Connell Diggin, I say that, and you know, this is the last segment of this podcast, and it's the last time that we're doing this. Probably the last time that me and you are doing an NFL podcast anyway, before Super Bowl situation. It's hard to believe this is the end already. Are you excited to have a year off and just sleep? Because I am. I can't wait.
I'm excited for the playoffs to start, because I think this is probably the first playoffs that we've covered in a few years where you really are not certain, like, who is not only who's the best team in it, but who's even going to make the Super Bowl, or who is even going to be in the conference championship games, which I think is really exciting looking at this season. Because, you know, every year, I mean, last year, you know, when the Commanders made it, like, that was a big surprise, but you knew that, you know, they were going to lose to the Eagles eventually.
I will say, like, you talk about like not having a clue. I would do a lot of our, like, obviously Hogan does as well. I would do a lot of our graphics, and last year I had the full set of Kansas City stuff ready. I did have some Commander stuff ready, but you know, you're right. There was a perception that the Commanders were not going to win, but I think you're bang on. I've had people come up to me in the shop last week, family members, different people asking me, just texting me as well. Geez, I want to put a bet on, whatever, or like, you know, like, it's so open. Yeah, like I've never seen something like this, and it pisses me off, Connell, when you hear people give off about the NFL, and if they don't like it because they've never watched it before. You find me something more open than this at the minute. Look at the Premier League, look at the All Ireland, and tell me that the NFL is boring. Please, feel free.
I'm more than happy with the All Ireland, to be honest.
Well, I know, like, we all know we are, lad, but hopefully that changes in a few weeks, a few months.
2030, I suppose, in your case.
I will remind people, sweet Jesus, I will remind people that I'm on the road, Tyrone, Mayo, and if Connell plays his cards right there after that comment, Kerry with Neil Reynolds, January the 22nd to 24th. Tickets are linktr.ee/PF Ireland. Check them out, folks. Working hard on getting different guests. We have Jim Scahill in Galway. It will be more of a wild card / divisional last minute announcement, but we are working on guests, and we'll see what happens. And probably the biggest part of this segment, Connell, on New Year's Day, Happy New Year to you and to everybody listening. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Is this discussion around week 18? The fact that it comes down to this game, the Steelers, the Ravens, and Akershire Stadium, and frankly, something that I think a lot of us did not see 1 to 2 weeks ago happening. I will hold my hands up. I'm obviously biased in the sense of definitely adopted the Steelers as one of my teams, and you know, want them to do well for the Irish market as well. I think it's very important. I have no regrets in saying that, but Connell, really just didn't see. One, I'll hold my hands up. I did not see the Ravens go in. I did not see the Ravens going into Lambeau Field and winning in the way that they did, is probably the best way to say it. I thought the Packers would have had a bit more of a fight in them. Certainly, though, disappointing. I think Irish Steelers fans listening to this will be disappointed to see how they played in week 17 going into this week. And frankly, we talked in the previous segment, Connell, about, the NFC South. And once the playoffs start, it's a new season, baby. Both teams are 0-0 going into this game. Nobody gives a damn what's going on. We will see what happens at QB for this weekend in terms of Lamar Jackson or Snoop. I think it doesn't really matter when you've got Derrick Henry there, does it? I mean, the one weekend where I'm not playing in the fantasy football game that actually means something, Derrick Henry goes off for about 50 odd points. So how the hell do you call this game? Like, it's so hard to call it.
Yeah, I'm really struggling as well, because obviously you have, like, if you're looking at the quarterback matchup, like, do you have to account for Lamar Jackson just possibly showing up completely healthy? And even if he shows up not fully healthy, do you feel confident enough that he's going to put in a good performance?
And I think that's one thing to say, Connell, as well. Like, look, we are pre-recording this by a day or two, so we don't have a full picture yet in terms of the QB situation, which people are like, oh, it's a festive season, it's New Year. I appreciate the fact that people are listening. You're all very, very welcome, but appreciate Connell dropping on as well. It's going to be one of two, isn't it? Like, more than likely. That's the reality.
Yeah. And even I don't think, unless he's like literally can't move, I think there's no way he doesn't play in this game pretty much. Like Derrick Henry, like they finally got him going. I think last time I was on, I think I talked about how just little they were using him and just were not giving him the ball enough, and that was kind of one of the reasons why they weren't playing so great. And then now that they finally started doing that again, and obviously we saw it in full effect last week, 36 carries for 216 yards. You can't really get much more of a Derrick Henry performance than that. And like it drove them to that win, and that's going to be something that Pittsburgh is going to struggle to stop, because again, like, no matter how good your run defense is, no matter how good your defense in general is, like, stopping Derrick Henry is one of the toughest things to do. And it's annoying for the Steelers as well, because again, it's kind of like we said, like, they could have avoided all of this, because they probably won their three most difficult games before this, especially with Baltimore and Detroit. Like, that Detroit game, you probably would have had them penciled in for a loss, and they ended Detroit's season with that game, and you were like, okay, they'll go into Cleveland, it might be a close game, but they'll come out with a win. And lost to a Cleveland team who again aren't fighting for anything. If anything, a loss helps them, considering what they want to do in the draft and whatever. But it's the NFL. Like, the players don't care about the draft, the players care about getting their next contract. And they did that, and especially the defense, which has been amazing for Cleveland all year, really showed how good that they are, and just that the Steelers couldn't they were able to be contained by that offense. So I think it's going to be really interesting. Like, Baltimore has a good defense, but hasn't showed up in every single game this year. The Steelers, some games they're the best team you've ever seen. Some games they just kind of completely fall off a cliff. So again, they're very much Jekyll and Hyde performances. And if we see the upside that we saw, against Detroit and in Dublin and everything like that, like, we're going to see them win this game, I think. But if we see Baltimore put in an anyway solid performance, and get Derrick Henry going, I think they win this one. Like, it's really, like, this one is a flip of a coin to me.
I think for a neutral, where we looked into this week not being a big week, by Jesus, this is some game for a neutral, folks. This is an absolutely massive game. More than likely, at the time of recording, that this will be for the 4th seed, a bit like the NFC South as well. So time will tell. Check out the player permutations on our social media on Monday morning after week 18. But, Connell, you mentioned the Lions there for the Steelers. And like, I try and look at it from both points of view. I obviously do a podcast, very grateful to do so in Ireland. Give it a listen if you can, folks, for the Steelers. But they went from such a gutsy performance, like the way that Jalen Warren played in Ford Field, to the way that defense stood up without TJ Watt across multiple weeks. And then somehow against Cleveland just couldn't get it done. Like, it fathoms belief, to be honest. I just don't get it.
This Cleveland team, like, obviously they don't have much going offensively, like we saw it. I mean, they only put up 13 points.
Look at Shedeur. You're a wee fanboy for Shedeur, so
But the defense is like the defense for Cleveland has been legit basically all year. Like it is, the defensive line, was always going to find a way to stop the run game, I think, against the Steelers team. And, even on that last play of the game where it was Marcus Valdez-Scantling, where it would have been probably DK Metcalf had he not had obviously the interaction with the fan. And would you pick DK Metcalf over Denzel Ward? I mean, it's a more close matchup than Marcus Valdez-Scantling anyway. So it's very, it's just all these little things kind of fell into place where, the Steelers almost feels like it just had to happen that they lost this game for the NFL to like set this up to be, this massive in-division, massive rivalry game just to even get to the playoffs. Like, in the NBA, they added playing like a play-in game to get into the playoffs for the 7th and 8th seeds. And, at the start it was kind of good, but it kind of fell off a little bit. But it used to be the same in baseball where the wild card game was just a one game winner takes all game. So the fact that we're getting kind of two of these this year where it's, whoever wins this game is getting into the playoff, and it matters for both sets of fans because, of the team they have to play and them being rivals and in division rivals as well, I think makes it even more special.
The one final thing I will say about repercussions here is this. If Pittsburgh lose, they miss the playoffs for the first time in how long? If Baltimore lose, I think there is going to be, and people have come out and said, oh, this is bollocks, nothing's going to happen, da-da-da-da-da. I do think there are serious repercussions for both teams on both sides. Coach Tomlin has 1 year left. Coach Harbaugh, he has done an awful lot for that city. But at the same time, for me, as a neutral looking in, if we're getting to every second part of December / early January, and your quarterback is not fit or injured, I'm sorry, I can't continue to sit here. Like I went to a game in, I want to say 2019 or no, it was 2021. Just after COVID, the Ravens against the Packers in M&T. It was like week 16, week 17, Connell, and Lamar wasn't playing again. That was the game where Harbaugh went for 2 and lost the game. That was an incredible game. I have to say it was an unbelievable game. But there's just been that there. Mark Andrews last year. For one of these teams, this weekend is really going to give something. And for me, it's, do we see TJ back for the Steelers? Do we see him back properly? I think this is a game where he has to come back. He has to get himself back into it. Guys like Cam Hayward for the Steelers, you feel like, they're going in thinking, Jesus, this could be my last home game in Acrisure Stadium. This is more like that. It's as simple as that. There is so much. And like Aaron Rodgers could potentially be playing the final game of his career if they don't win this game. There is so much. And I think mentally, from that point of view, maybe in the back of his mind, Aaron Rodgers probably went thinking, Jesus, you know what, we're quite close here. We're going to make a run. I'm happy. And you could see his face on that 4th down on Sunday past there. They're not where they want to be. This is just fascinating. I can't wait for this game. Give us a winner. I'm going to be, blatantly honest, put the biased hat on here to make my life as easy as possible over the next 6 weeks. I'll take the Steelers to win it, but by God, they'll win it very, very tight. Chris Boswell, 2017. I have a feeling you're going to say the Ravens just looking at you.
I think before the season, I picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. Now, do I think that's going to happen? Like, probably not, considering how they've played this year and the fact that we don't even know how good or how healthy their starting quarterback is. But I just think like this roster is more talented, even with the injuries they've had. So I'm going to go with the Ravens to win this one. Again, it's going to be insanely close. Like if the Steelers won, and by 2 points or 1 point, it would not surprise me. But I think it's going to come down to the final minutes in this one. And I think so long as it's a victory for me, who's a neutral in this case, I don't really care who wins.
A neutral, hear you. I'm only having the crack here. I will say this because I remember my heart being broke. You talk about the Ravens. Just bear with me a second. If the Broncos were the number 1 seed and if they suddenly hosted the Ravens in a couple of weeks or whatever, there's the Broncos have a serious chance for revenge here for a start. That game broke my heart as a young NFL fan. That Mile High Miracle. I'll never forget it. Jacoby Jones. How amazing would it be?
Did you do the dance?
If
Well, he did the Jacoby Jones dance.
How amazing would it be if, and this is like, look, this segment is pre-recorded, folks. It is still festive period. Joe Flacco, early in the week, rocks into Cincinnati and says, guys, I want to get one more run in Baltimore. I want you to release me. I'll pay whatever you want. And they sign him. And Joey F goes on one more tear this way. Like, look, like, taking away the ridiculous stuff, this is a hell of a game. As football fans, we should be happy for this.
Do you know what the Ravens should do? Whatever happens, trade for Anthony Richardson. I know he's injury prone, but if you hope that he's injury prone and Lamar is injury prone at the same time, you have same levels of athleticism. He can't throw as well as Lamar, but at least he can throw and he's shown some sort of talent. I just think that would be kind of fun. And then imagine the two quarterback sets that they could run with the two of them. Probably the first two quarterback backfield in NFL history.
I don't even know what to say to that. That's unbelievable. Right, here, finishing off here, give us a bold prediction ahead of the playoffs. What's going to happen? Bold prediction. Okay, that's a big statement to make, but
yeah,
let people in the car laugh. Go for it.
I think we're going to see the first ever 2 wildcard NFL. I think we're going to see the first ever 2 wildcard Super Bowl in NFL history this year. Just with this, you know, like looking at the AFC, like you have the Patriots, Broncos, and Jags as kind of the top 3 seeds. You'd be confident enough in maybe the Bills beating one of them, in, you know, the Texans beating them in a defensive shootout in one of those games as well. And then in the NFC, you know, you have the 49ers and Rams as wildcard teams. And I think the Rams, even though they've not played super well the past few weeks, I still think they're probably the
potential wildcard teams. We will see.
Yeah, I think they are probably the best team in the NFL, in my opinion. So I would at the moment I'm picking them to make the Super Bowl and possibly win it. But you know, we'll have to see kind of where they finish out at the end of the season. But I think we're going to see a 2 wildcard Super Bowl, even if that means the Broncos won't make it.
The last time that I was at a Super Bowl that wasn't with the Kansas City Chiefs in it, very lucky to experience it and stuff, don't get me wrong. It was a home game for the LA Rams. I'm going to take the Niners getting to the Super Bowl in the NFC, albeit through an incredible. We'll not talk about that division right now, but albeit through an incredible run in the playoffs, regardless how that happens. The Broncos worry me, Connell, to be honest. They do. I think that bye week is good, but depending on who they might face at home, it worries me because I've seen them too many times this year win games so tightly, and I know that's you have to win a game like that. You have to win a game and move on. That's the cusp of a potential champion, is getting the job done and moving on. The Broncos worry me. I've seen it too many times down through the years, and I hope to God it doesn't happen. I hope they're not one and done. That's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to move on. That will be outrageous. So here, it's happened before. It's happened before. Yeah.
I mean, me and Dara are going to be watching that Broncos game in Miami, so it's going to be at a regular time for me, so I won't even have to stay up late no matter what time the game is on. So I'm really hoping that whatever it is, whoever they play, they win, because I'll be able to watch the full thing and fully enjoy the full thing.
We will not talk about the division. Finally, from me, imagine a bold situation where Sam Darnold goes one and done again this year. I'm going to move on and say no more if that happened again. Just finally, ahead of week 18, you know, obviously there's a number of games this week. We haven't even mentioned the fact that Myles Garrett didn't get the sack record in week 17 against the Steelers. He now plays Cincinnati on the road. So look, do you know what? Best luck to him.
Yeah, I would. I think every team, just like, as much as it would be a historic moment, you just don't want it to happen against you. And I think even now that it's going to happen in the 17th game of the season, it almost makes it feel less, because you're like, he did 17 games instead of 16. I think that's why there was a lot of hype around it this week, because it was like, okay, he's done it in 16 games. Like, you can say he has it. But I think every team just doesn't want it to happen against them. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see at some point like 4 men blocking Myles Garrett just to try and stop him from getting this sack record.
just finally, like, a lot of football taking place this weekend that we've talked about, and big thanks to Jeff for popping on as well. But just finally, Connell, who needs a win most this weekend? Who's gone on Monday if you don't get a win?
Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles needs a win. Jonathan Gannon, I mean, I think he's gone anyway. I don't think it matters. I think it's same with Raheem Morris. Be interesting. There's supposedly talks.
Aaron Glenn's really interesting.
No, really, I think Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn is. I think he's safe. I think he is safe. I think they saw, especially with how things went in Detroit, in Detroit when he was there. He's been there the whole time. They understand that it's about building a culture rather than just replacing coaches over and over and over again. And I think it's interesting with teams like the Falcons and the Cardinals, where they have rosters and they're in divisions where there's a chance they can compete, but they just haven't really done it. So I think their head coaches are probably just gone anyway. I also think it's interesting week for, Geno Smith, Justin Fields or Tyrod Taylor, and then Shador / whoever's starring in Cleveland, because, these are teams that are going to be looking at quarterbacks in the draft next year as well. If you have a big performance, even if that means they're going to take a quarterback, it means you could get traded or you're going to be a starter somewhere else based on, the performance you had to end the season this year.
The top echelons of the draft in terms of the top 1 to around 16, 17 picks will be made after week 18. We'll talk about that probably in the college football podcast. A lot of stuff coming up over the next few weeks. The final thing that I'll say, Connell, on that is, in terms of guys going, if the Steelers don't win on week 18's game against the Ravens to go to the playoffs, don't expect the Rooney family to make any rash decisions, but I certainly don't expect Mike Tomlin to get fired. Maybe there's an agreement, this is the last year, da-da-da-da-da. But I think the bigger thing is, the draft's in Pittsburgh. It's a big deal for the city. It's a big deal for the Rooney family as much as the Dublin game was. I would expect Arthur Smith to be gone within 48 hours. If that was the case, time will tell. I would even go as far as saying the DC would go. I don't think Danny Smith would go, but certainly there will be repercussions from it. We would expect repercussions next week. It's a massive, massive weekend. Connell, thank you very much for coming on, folks. We have got Jeff's Week 18 picks dropping on Friday, and a whole plethora of different amounts of content, including college football stuff. We're going to try and bribe Connell to give us a voice reaction to the college football playoff quarterfinals, with so much stuff on it, folks. You can check us out at PF Ireland on social media, Instagram, X as well. Check out SBK's link in the bio, 18+. Please be gamble aware. Connell, thank you very much for coming on, my friend, and we hope everybody enjoys week 18 and enjoys that final goodbye from Scott Hansen. Thank you, folks.